Picture this, it's 2010 and your favourite website, That Guy with the Glasses, announces that they've made a special featuring all of the creators on the website. It's fun, it's poorly made, which adds to its charm, and it doesn't take itself seriously at all. It's not trying to be something that it's not, it's just a stupid short film about movie reviewers fighting game reviewers. It naturally goes down a treat, and along with it, the fans are treated to copious amounts of crossover reviews. What a time to be alive, our 2010 selves said. But then a year later, with That Guy with the Glasses still growing, so did the aspirations of Doug, Rob and the rest of the crew. They said, hey, why don't we get 20 people together in a remote house in the desert and film an entire feature film in a week? And everyone around them said, sure, why not? And Kick-Assia was born. The film had a simple story, really. Doug decides to invade the micronation of Molossia and claim it as his own. Once he does that, he declares himself ruler, turns into a malevolent dictator, and hijinks ensue. In Kick-Assia, Doug plays a narcissistic version of the nostalgia critic character. So, is it the same NC from his reviews? Who knows, he hadn't ever declared that he wanted to rule a micronation before, so this comes rather out of the blue. Imagine if Roger Ebert had decided to make a movie and suddenly claim himself to be the King of Finland. What I'm trying to say is that it's not something you'd expect to see from a movie reviewer. So, is it Doug writing himself a role which he sees as representation of his true self? Albeit exaggerated, of course. Another year later, and maybe the next film, Suburban Nights, will be different. The NC enlists his reviewer buddies again to track down an ancient gauntlet. They split off into two teams, with Doug leading the main group and a second group full of reviewers that nobody likes, I guess? But the approach was different, regardless of the troubled production, which was almost cancelled partway through due to the weather getting in the way of the outdoor shoot. And Doug may have given himself the coolest character and the most to do, but he isn't heightening himself to supreme ruler. This is good. Narcissism perhaps subsiding? Let's see what the Year 3 film has to offer. He basically makes himself the creator and sacrifices himself to save humanity. Okay then, so he goes from low-key fighter to dictator to leader of a small group to God. Now, remember in my previous videos in this series when I said how Doug was the main draw to That Guy with the Glasses? And to be honest, rightly so. Why wouldn't he be? But I do find it interesting how he gives himself these mighty positions in his films. Year 5 was a lot different, with a series of short films, one starring me as a narcissistic character. Dunno why, look at the state of me. But overall, there wasn't as much narcissism from this year as there had been in previous years. But what about other angry movie reviewers who went on to make features? I mean, the Cinema Snob movie literally has people screaming at him about how much they love him. In Atop the Fourth Wall, Linkara plays about 300 different characters. With NerdQuest, it wasn't shot digitally, and due to the weather ruining 2 days of filming, some of the shots came out blurry and blue, and oh god, it was hard work, but it's still a fairly fun movie. Let me know in the comments if you want me to make a full video on NerdQuest. It would definitely be fun to revisit. The Ashens movie is different. Yes, Stuart makes himself the hero, as you would, it's his movie after all, but he uses his supporting cast well. He doesn't hog the limelight and had legit actors in there. Like, holy shit, it's Robert Llewellyn and Warwick Davis and me! Damn, there's that narcissism again. Can't help it. But each of these films are very different beasts. The Channel Awesome films are very much a child of the fandom. You have to have watched at least Doug's content to understand a lot of the in-jokes. The same goes for Atop the Fourth Wall, which is essentially a continuation of Lewis's show, which has been running for like 10 years. Oh my god, that's a long time. 10 years, really? Anyway, Atop the Fourth Wall has its own characters and story arcs and jokes. The movie is for the fans, and it isn't necessarily something which somebody who's never seen the web show before is going to pick up and dive into. It's like watching Return of the King before Fellowship and Two Towers and then expecting to know who everyone is and why they're all such in a tizzy. With NerdQuest, it's a self-contained story with new characters. Fine. maybe. It's okay. Let me know if you want to see a video. The Cinema Snob movie is... moving on. Ashen's. This one is interesting. It's both for the fans and yet it's also easily accessible. There are nods to the web show, but it isn't necessary viewing. You're not meant to see a fucking inflatable fucking crown and know that he has to head to Loot Crate HQ to... I don't know where I'm going with this. My point is, Ashen's and the Quest for the Game Child is accessible to all and is easily the best movie from the angry reviewer community. If you can even call Stuart an angry reviewer. I don't know. Can you? The film's well written, well shot, has great performances, great music, great visual effects. It's the whole package. There's no blurry shots here. No bad sound.
Guess I should ask myself, what would Pauline Kael do?
No visual effects made in Microsoft Paint. No line reading equivalent to the plays you made your nan do at Christmas when you were bored.
Going to bring you a warning.
Or is that last one just me? Maybe. I may be biased, but give Ashen's and the Quest for the Game Child a watch. It's cracking, and Stuart didn't write himself as omnipotent overlord or saviour of the world being cheered on by adoring fans. Can you imagine? What sort of person would write a role like that for themselves? I can picture it now. The opening would be filled with people proclaiming their love. There would be hordes of people screaming. They'd be seen as a god to people, standing in front of them whilst they cling on to every word they say. Oh wait, such a film does exist, and it's only fair that we take a look at it. Following the success of the Channel Awesome films, which featured a certain angry video game nerd character, James Rolfe decided to crowdfund a movie of his own. The campaign obliterated their expectations, giving them over $300,000 to make the movie. Wow, this thing is gonna be huge. And it is, but I'm not sure for the right reasons. Okay, we all know that the AVGN is one of the big boys in the world of angry reviewing, and is basically the godfather of the genre. In the early 2010s, he produced regular reviews, and being a filmmaker at heart, why wouldn't you branch out to make a feature? James never comes across as a haughty person. He keeps himself private, doesn't seem to appear very much on social media, and comes across as a very humble guy. His videos showcase his passion for filmmaking, film, and video games. With so many years behind him of critiquing media, you'd think he'd be self-aware enough so that he'd produce a really great movie. He'd know the tropes to use, the tropes to avoid, the cliches, the arcs, the characters, No, I can't do it. I'm just gonna have to come out and say it. The AVGN movie is trash. Or should I say it sucks diarrhea donkey dick mother shitting ass biscuits? I don't know, I gave it my best shot. So, the movie's about the AVGN, a guy who reviews bad video games and is loved by people all over the world. And how do we know this? Because, well, they show us in a long montage of genuine fans who praise him for a solid 90 seconds. That's a minute and a half of people just saying how much they love him. Isn't that a bit much? We get that you're popular, but that seems a little excessive, don't you think? Why don't you just have text flashing on the screen at all times, displaying people's tweets about how much they bloody adore you? Maybe dial it down a little. Surely we don't need to spend a quarter of the opening act gushing over our main character. The story to the AVGN movie is as follows. People want the nerd to review the famously bad Atari game E.T. The nerd isn't keen but agrees to film a review of the brand new E.T. 2. But to do this he has to travel to a landfill where millions of copies of the original game are buried. But he's stopped by the army who thinks he's a terrorist. This leads him to hunting down the creator of the game, but learns from this scientist that the Roswell space crash was actually real, and the spaceship was broken down and made into the E.T. game cartridges, which are actually a map to Area 51 where the real-life alien continues to live. Then it's up to the nerd to stop an evil robot thing from destroying Las Vegas so he can finally review E.T. for his fans. Yeah, not an easy movie to write an elevator pitch for. If you've seen an episode of the AVGN before, you'll know what to expect. Swearing, puke jokes, crazy special effects and video game insanity. But you'd also expect there to be some laughs in there too, right? Because it's a comedy movie too, right? Apparently not. I mean, come on, the guy's name is Rolf. That's almost Ruffle. What the hell? So much of the charm and shock value of AVGN's web series is missing here. It seems like the character simply doesn't work when he's interacting with other characters. That's not what he's about. I mean, it doesn't help that Rolf himself is clearly not a natural performer. Let's face it, he can only do 3 facial expressions. Normal, downturned mouth, and downturned open mouth. How you feeling, nerd? Angry. What's wrong, nerd? Shocked. How you doing, nerd? Confused. It doesn't matter what time of day or night it is, whether he's hungry or tired or about to sneeze, it's his go-to expression. And when your lead actor can't act, it really does affect the movie. Don't get me wrong, Rolf gives it his all, if by all is this face, but when you have genuine actors doing what they do around you, it brings the overall quality down. Then again, the whole film seems to have been horribly miscast. There's a scene with the nerd at work, because, yeah, he works in a game store apparently, and his boss is yelling at him whilst on the phone, and then we have this throwaway gag at the end.
It's a boy. Oh, no, I knew my semen was good.
So does that mean this guy's a new dad? Really? The actor's like 60 years old. What about this guy who looks directly at the camera? Does he know you're not supposed to do that? Because it doesn't look intentional. This character is Mr. Cockburn. That's right, Cockburn. See, it's written on the side of the van and that's what everybody calls him. Except the joke doesn't really work, does it? Because there's a brand of port with the same name, isn't there? And it's pronounced Coburns, isn't it? And it's a shame that the film aims so low with its humour. It's like it's trying to appeal to small children, whilst at the same time trying to appeal to adults, and I don't think it really gels with itself. The web series has the smut and the slapstick and the gross out stuff, but done so much better. So it's a shame that the movie feels the need to dial this back. They even relegate some of the gross out stuff to off screen. Why bother? Was it too expensive? The nerd pukes over ET2 in the first act, so why not use the same tech here? Or weren't you allowed to puke on this set? Well, if so, then why include it at all? Of course, the movie is littered with references. They're not quite as in your face as what you might expect from a Channel Orson movie, but they are still pretty in your face. Unlike Mike Matei and Kyle Justin, who just make cameo appearances. And speaking of cameos, there is a hell of a lot of them in this movie. Don't you worry about that, with some performances better than others. No names or anything. The whole movie has a real asylum mockbuster feel about it. The sets aren't great, there's questionable green screen, bad acting, hokey performances, interesting miniature work. I mean, don't get me wrong, some of the miniatures are great. Some of the Vegas destruction scenes are really impressive, but others not so much. Stop filming your miniatures from so high, it doesn't help with making them look miniature. Or is that what you're going for? At this point, I honestly can't tell. If the movie was as self-referential as it's trying to be, then it would have avoided some major blunders. Like, why is the army bothered about the nerd? At the point they start chasing him, they don't know he's looking for a map to Area 51. They do it just because he's there. And this scene, which comes completely from nowhere and is the most obvious piece of setup ever.
True, Santa Claus is real.
Yeah? Well, you probably believe the world is flat.
The world is flat.
Really? So how come nobody's ever fallen off?
Gravity?
Like, where did that come from? Why does he know this? Why does he believe this? The setup and payoff in this movie doesn't work at all. Cooper and Mandy end up together at the end of the movie. And where the hell does this come from? Up until this point, there has been no awkwardness, no passing glances, no almosts. It just happens. It's so weird. To have the payoff, you need to first have the setup. But then again, the writing is one of the things which hurts the movie the most. The second act feels like it starts twice. The dialogue is clunky. character motivations are questionable, and the worst part is that it's painfully obvious that Rolf can't write for women. I guess all these years of writing reviews and solo videos means that he's forgotten how women talk or something? I mean, look at this.
This is so cool. Would you sign my breasts?
What was this if not more ego stroking? Or perhaps he was hoping to stroke something else. And yes, I'm not above masturbation jokes. At least the movie passes the Bechdel test and has a scene in it with two women not talking about a man, but that's not to say it's a solid pass.
Alright, bitch!
Now I thought I could get through this without objectifying myself in a sexy catfight.
Because all women say to each other is bitch and act like they're about to possibly make out at any second. Come on, this movie was made in 2014. Write better for female characters, for goodness sake. Of course, at the end, the nerd comes out on top. He even has a massive crowd of people with him to literally cheer him on. Amazing. Who the hell writes a scene for themselves which involves a crowd of people chanting your name? Or includes 90 seconds of people showering you with praise? Or includes a scene where a woman asks you to sign her tits? Somehow, and I didn't think it was possible, the angry video game nerd movie is even more narcissistic than any of the Channel Awesome movies. And in one of those, Doug is literally playing a god. And this is where Doug handled things better than Rolf has with the nerd. In the Channel Awesome specials, they were set in a world where the critic is the character. He isn't an e-celeb. He doesn't have fans running up to him at table conventions. Oh, for God's sake. In the AVGN movie, it's set in a world where the nerd is a real person and is famous for his videos. It's like completely fictional and meta at the same time, and overall quite confusing. I don't want to completely bash the movie though. It takes a leaf from the Ashens movie and is accessible for everyone, with in-jokes being more or less relegated to the background, but then again, who is going to watch this movie if they're not already a nerd fan? Is someone going to pick up the DVD and think, I'll give this a watch? Clearly, a lot of love has gone into the movie. Some of the effects are excellent, it's a lot of fun, and the music is great. Which is not surprising when you realise it's done by Bear McCreary, a legit TV and film composer. The actors are clearly doing what they can with the material. I just wish that some of the characters had been fleshed out more than others have been allowed to, and no, I don't mean in the same way certain characters mean.
Didn't work, sir.
You should have put her into something more provocative.
It pains me to say it, but for me, the AVGN movie was harder to sit through than the Channel Awesome anniversaries. It just lacked the heart and charm, which is a shame. But what it lacks in certain areas, it makes up for in narcissism. And I just don't get why it had to be this way. It just makes the nerd come across as shallow, which we know James Rolfe himself isn't. This just baffles me. But am I alone in this opinion? Let me know in the comments below. But this has been fun, as my foray into the world of angry reviewing slowly comes to a close. Please subscribe to the channel, ring the little bell, and please consider supporting the show on Patreon. Or is that all a little bit too narcissistic of me to ask? Possibly. Thanks for watching.